Mark Twain's father-in-law-to-be loaned him some money to become a partner in the Buffalo Express. He bought into that paper with the idea that he could increase the circulation of that newspaper, and he did significantly. But his partners, George Selkirk and a man named Josephus Larned, were more traditional newspapermen. And the way that Twain increased circulation was he added some freewheeling editorials, some fiction, some humor, and those partners took exception to the way he did it, and so there was a falling out, and eventually he left that newspaper. As far as I know, he did not ever edit an agricultural paper, but this story certainly is very much like the kind of conversations that he would have had with his business partners before he left. The story is called How I Edited an Agricultural Newspaper. I had misgivings about taking temporary editorship of an agricultural paper the same way a landlubber might feel upon taking command of a ship, but salary was an object given my circumstances, so I agreed to step in while the regular editor went off for holiday. It felt luxurious to be editing again, and I threw myself into the work. We went to press that very day, and as I went home, I noted various groups of people staring and pointing at me. The same curious crowd followed me as I went to work the next morning, and I reveled in my newfound celebrity. I'd been at it half an hour when an old gentleman with a flowing beard and an austere face came up to me, paper in hand. That would be me.
Are you the new editor? Have you ever edited an agricultural paper before?
This is my first attempt.
Very likely. Have you ever had any experience in agriculture?
I believe I have
practically?
not. Said the old gentleman, putting on his spectacles, looking over them at me with disgust.
Let me read you what gave me that instinct. It was this editorial. Listen and see if it was you that wrote it. Turnips should never be pulled. It injures them. It is much better to send a boy up and let him shake the tree. Now, what do you think of that?
I think it's good. I think it is sense. I have no doubt that every year millions and millions of bushels of turnips are spoiled in this township alone by being pulled in a half-ripe condition when, if they'd sent a boy up to shake the tree...
Shake your grandmother.
Well, they don't,
turnips
do
don't
they?
grow on trees.
Well, who said they did? The language was intended to be figurative. Anybody that knows anything will know that meant the boy should shake the vine. Then this old person got up and tore his paper into shreds, stamped on them, and broke several things with his cane, and said I didn't know as much as a cow, and then went out. I fancied he was displeased about something, but not knowing what the trouble was, I couldn't be any help to him. Not long afterward, a long, cadaverous creature with shoulder-length locks and a week's stubble on his face showed up. Highly agitated, he looked right and left to make certain nobody but me was in the room. Then he thrust a paper at me and demanded that I read from it. And so I did. The guano is a fine bird, but it must be reared with care. Imported only between June and September, and kept in a warm place during the winter months. The grain season appears to be moving backward, so buckwheat cake should be planted in July instead of August. The pumpkin berry is a favorite fruit with the natives of New England, preferring it to gooseberries when making fruit cakes. It is the only member of the orange family that will thrive in the north, except the gourd and one or two varieties of squash. But planting it in the front yard with the shrubbery is fast going out of vogue because it has been found to be a failure as a shade tree. Here he stopped my reading, sprang toward me, and shook my hand vigorously. "Oh, thank you! Thank you!" said he.
I thought I'd gone crazy after reading this. I set fire to my house and have probably crippled half a dozen people in my frenzy to get here. But now you've confirmed that I actually read this insanity. I can rest easy knowing that my mind has stood the strain of one of your articles.
At this, he hopped off, overjoyed. I felt a bit uncomfortable with the arsons and cripplings this wild man had entertained himself with, feeling remotely accessory to them. But my musings were quickly banished when the regular editor walked in, clearly having cut short his trip to Egypt. He surveyed the damage done by the last two visitors, heaved a deep sigh, and said,
Well, the physical mess here is not the worst of it. I fear that the reputation of the paper is permanently injured. True, the paper has never sold such a large edition or soared to such celebrity, but we prefer not to be famous for lunacy or prosper from the infirmities of the mind. There are crowds gathered on the streets, all trying to get a glimpse of you, thinking you are insane. Whatever put into your head that you could edit a paper of this nature? It couldn't be worse if I thought you'd actually calculated to destroy this paper. You don't seem to have even the rudiments of agriculture. Why didn't you tell me that?
I replied, "Tell you? What in the world should I need to tell you, you cabbage, you son of a cauliflower? I've been in the editorial business going on 14 years, and it's the first time I've ever heard that a man has to know anything in order to edit a newspaper. Who writes critiques of drama for second-rate newspapers? Shoemakers and apprentice pharmacists, that's who. Who writes book reviews? People who never wrote one. No political pundit has ever successfully run for office. Don't you try and tell me anything about the newspaper business, you turnip. But since you chose to treat me as I have been treated, I'm happy to leave this place behind. I've done my duty and fulfilled my contract. I told you I could make this paper of interest to all classes, and so I have. If I had 2 more weeks, I could run your circulation up to 20,000, well beyond the meager agricultural sorts that read it now. In fact, most likely there'd be nary a farmer left by the time I was done. You are the loser in this rupture, not me, you potted plant. Adios." Then I left.